Good evening from Sherborne in Dorset, where the Queen started her Diamond Jubilee tour of the West Country today. Our reigning monarch arrived this morning amid the showers and with her kingdom very much on flood alert. Now, we'll have full reports on the local weather conditions later in the programme. But the good news, as the Queen and Prince Philip got off the royal train this morning, well, the skies cleared and the umbrellas came down. Our first report is from Clinton Rogers.
Not even an extreme weather warning could deter these ardent royal watchers. Some had queued for hours just to bag the best spot.
Since 6:30!
6:30, is it worth it in the rain?
Yeah, we love it. We love it!
Mind you, if you park too early in a spot earmarked for royalty, well, this is what happens. As if to order, the rain stopped as soon as the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh stepped off the royal train and into Sherborne. Only the royal feet saw any rain today. This was to be a brief Jubilee visit, only 1 hour, but the town was determined to put on a show, including a Mad Hatter's tea party in the grounds of the Abbey for local schoolchildren. So you're Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah.
What did the Queen say to you, Alice?
She said hello, thank you, and is that for me when she saw the presents in my hand?
And what was the present you gave her?
A CD, flowers, and that's it.
A food fair showcased the best of Dorset, and the royal visitors even got a few samples to take back to Buckingham Palace.
I don't think she realised she could take the hamper away, but it's gone on the royal car, it's going on the train, and hopefully it'll go back to the palace and she'll be having our sausage, eggs and bacon for tomorrow breakfast.
From there it was on to Digby Church Memorial Hall for a 1952 themed coffee morning. And as she left, a chance encounter with some familiar looking canine fans.
She said that she's got her own 3 in the palace and that she was very pleased to see them out in attendance.
For young and old, this was a day which will live long in the memory. And those who've spent decades following royal visits say this Jubilee tour is one the Queen is really enjoying.
And she's so fit, amazingly fit, as she gets around and does all this. You know, I mean, there's no sort of sign of aching or creaking. It's just as though nothing's changed.
The smiles as she left spoke volumes. This was a monarch at her relaxed best. Clinton Rogers, BBC Points West, Sherborne.
Well, just as the Queen left, would you believe it, the sun came out, and it's been a glorious day here. But the Queen didn't see Sherborne quite at its best, so we thought we'd show you what it looked like at its very finest. Described as the most beautiful town in England, Sherborne is famous, of course, for its abbey, its schools, and the lovely golden colour of its cottages built with the local ham stone. The Queen came to the throne in 1952. This is one part of the kingdom which I think has barely changed at all during those 60 years. Well, let's talk now to the local vicar who helped show the royal party around. That's Canon Eric Woods. Canon Woods, this was a closely guarded secret until fairly recently, wasn't it?
It was indeed. We were sworn to secrecy over a year ago, and we weren't able to make anything public until we had the green light from Buckingham Palace, which was scarily not very long ago.
Now, how has the town responded, and what has the visit meant?
It's meant a huge amount because it's brought together young people and the elderly. It's brought people from commerce and the world of education, and of course the Abbey itself. The whole town and the whole county is thrilled to be part of the Jubilee celebrations in this way.
Now, you had the job of showing, I think, mostly Prince Philip round this morning, wasn't it?
That's right.
How did you get on, all right?
Extremely well. I was very nervous because I knew I had to get him out to meet the Queen when she had finished at the food fair. I'd been given lots of dire warnings if he was still in the Abbey at the wrong time, but he was extremely good and bang on cue, so that was a great relief.
And was he appreciative of what he saw inside?
He's fascinated by anything technical, and we had artists and craftsmen doing woodwork, stone carving, letter cutting, all sorts of things like that, and he was very interested in all of it and spoke to them all.
Glad it went well. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us about it. Well, from Sherborne, the Queen and Prince Philip got back on the royal train and headed east. They pulled in at Salisbury station. From there, they visited the Rifles Regiment Museum and took a stroll around the cathedral and its grounds to loud cheers and applause. Well, earlier in Clinton's report, do you remember you saw the Queen's feet in the puddles this morning? And it reminded me of Sir Walter Raleigh. Now, when Elizabeth I was confronted with a puddle, he leapt forward with his expensive cloak and threw it to the ground so the Queen could step gently over it. Now, that won him the Queen's favour. And as a coincidence, Sir Walter used to worship in this very church behind me. It was a shame you weren't here, Alex, this morning, because I could have thrown your cloak down for the Queen.
So chivalrous, David. Thank you so very much. And we've really got an idea of the excitement and enthusiasm there. Wonderful. We'll return to you shortly. I'm sure we'll have more on that. Now then, back to our main story. The visit, of course, of Her Majesty the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh as part of her Diamond Jubilee celebrations. David is in Sherborne in Dorset for us this evening. Good evening, David.
Hello again. Just look at that golden light falling on the Abbey as evening falls here in Dorset. This place really has quite taken me. It is absolutely stunning. The Duke and the Queen, of course, were here earlier this morning. They attended a local food fair, and some of the remnants, as it were, of that fair are still here. So let's just take a look at what they've got. Any chance of a biscuit round here as I make my way down? Thanks very much. Oh. Not even a chocolate one, thank you very much indeed. Now, we saw earlier in Clinton's report the Queen receiving a hamper, and Giles Henschel is one of the orchestrators of all this. You've got your hamper here. Yep. We saw she was quite surprised to get it.
I think she was absolutely delighted. It's one of the nicest things that we were able to do, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to think right now that this is actually on the royal train being tucked into by the royal party. So we've got a selection of all sorts of things from all sorts of Dorset producers, and we actually sort of created a Dorset Jubilee menu, which we presented to her this morning.
So some nice Dorset Sunshine olives?
Yep, Dorset Sunshine olives. You may not think that they grow over here, but then the people that make marmalade, they didn't grow the oranges in this country either. And so this is actually us. We actually made those. But we do all of this actually all in Dorset. So we have fudges, biscuits, Dorset cereals.
How important is food to this county?
Hugely important. I mean, artisan food and speciality food is one of the sort of the mainstays. And I think that actually Dorset is now really right at the very heart of one of the speciality food revolutions in the country.
Right, and she's got some of that on the royal train tonight.
She's got all of this on the royal train tonight.
OK, so there'll be no shortage of a royal supper?
Absolutely not. No, she's been tucking into a Dorset high tea right at this very minute. I'm delighted to think so.
Good. I'm glad that they approved of what you've got on. And let's just talk to someone else who got very close to the Queen. Kerry, we saw you in that report earlier.
Yes.
Offering Her Majesty some jewellery. You make jewellery as a bit of a hobby, is that right?
Yes,
and you managed to get it through, and she...
I know.
Yeah.
So lucky. Well, luckily I caught the lady-in-waiting's eye and said, can I give the Queen a present? And she said, OK. So she come over and, yeah, took it on. So that was very special.
I suppose it makes a change, doesn't it, from flowers?
Absolutely. Flowers and food and jewellery.
And the jewellery that she wears, is that likely to be the Queen's style, what stuff that you...
Well, I hope so. That's why I picked it out. But I know she wears a lot of brooches, so you never know. I gave her some necklaces, so we'll see. I will be keeping my eyes peeled.
Because she's got quite a bit of jewellery at the moment, hasn't she?
Yes, yes. I would think so.
Well, I don't know, crown jewels or your jewellery.
Few of them, you know.
Who's to choose? But thank you very much indeed for talking to us, and well done and getting so up close and so personal with the Queen. Quite an achievement. Someone else who got up close and personal with the Queen. He does like to hobnob. You saw him earlier, Clinton Rogers, our correspondent. Clinton, it seemed to go very well, but it's not the end. She's coming back tomorrow.
She is, yeah, I think you're right. It did go pretty well. It's 14 years ago the Queen was last here in Sherborne. She unveiled a window in the Abbey behind me. And yeah, I think they did do pretty well today. You are right, though. Back again tomorrow in Somerset, arriving by royal train again in Yeovil at 10 o'clock. And then she goes on to a country fair in Nine Springs Country Park. I've got a route if you want to wave to her. She goes through Sherborne Road, Wreckleford, Queensway and Brunswick Street, so plenty of chances to wave at her there. And then it's on to Crookherne, through the villages of West Coker and East Chinnock. A couple of things to do in Crookherne, so Somerset will be looking forward to welcoming the Queen tomorrow, and I imagine they will give her as big a welcome as they did here in Dorset today. It's
another brief visit, isn't it? I guess that's in recognition of the very long time that the Queen has been serving.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to remember that she's not a young lady. The Duke of Edinburgh, obviously, much the same. He's getting on in years, not to put a too fine a point on it. And, you know, I don't think they were ever planning long stays. And if you look at everything they've done so far in this Jubilee tour that started in March, they've never been particularly long visits that they've done. But it's great, isn't it, that she's here for one day and then back again tomorrow. Is she spending the night in Dorset or in Somerset? Who knows? There's whispers that she might be on the royal train somewhere or shopping. Who knows?
I feel that she's probably back in her bed, but she's got some nice Dorset food.
She was sitting on the royal train, tucking into it now, you know. Didn't give any to us, though, did she?
You're on duty for us again tomorrow.
Yes, and it'll be on Points West throughout the day tomorrow, so join us for the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh in Somerset.
I think you deserve a knighthood, actually.
Thank you. Would you mention it? Put in a tip.
Now, I have to say, if you haven't been to Sherborne before, it is really worth a visit. It is, to be honest, my first visit. I came down from Bristol on all the B roads, and everywhere I looked, there was flooding in the fields, and some of the roads were quite flooded as well. So let's catch up with the weather, and Elizabeth back in the studio.
Thank you very much, David. It certainly looks gorgeous. Well, it's been a big day for Sherborne and for Salisbury. The last time the Queen was here at the cathedral was in 1974, and lots of people I spoke to remembered that visit very fondly. The aim today was to represent the whole county of Wiltshire with these tents that are being packed away now with displays on all areas of life. There were long-horned sheep, prize-winning pigs, a selection of druids, lots to catch the eye of a monarch on a walkabout. There was a warm Wiltshire welcome from the moment Her Majesty the Queen's visit began. The Queen was presented with a posy by train driver's son Jacob Bennett, and nearby in the Cathedral Close, a big crowd waited for their first glimpse of the Diamond Queen.
Oh, it's just such a wonderful day. It's just the community is all together, and you know, it's just very exciting to see the Queen.
Oh, it's just that nice feeling in your heart that, you know, that she's there, and the Duke of Edinburgh.
First stop, the Rifles Museum. For the dog-loving Queen, a story of man's best friend. Bobby the dog. He was awarded a medal by Queen Victoria for his bravery in the Afghanistan campaign. In a tented village outside, all things Wiltshire were celebrated, with different parts of the county showcasing their history and traditions. It was a proud day for those acting as the Queen's guides to Wiltshire life.
I'm overwhelmed. She spent so long in our tent, much longer than we expected, and was so interested in everything the Amesbury community area has to offer.
And you gave her a parting gift?
I did, and we had a selection of 5 of the very finest flints from 8,000 years ago in a presentation pack, and they've been taken away to the palace.
In the cathedral itself, the Queen met school children involved in history projects. Many also helped to construct Mayday Queen Guinevere and her giant corgi Sir Pantalot. But it was the real Queen who people couldn't take their eyes off today.
George, we were waving our flags at her, and then she waved back at us. And my sister thought she was going to be dressed up in yellow. It was in the car. We were all waving our flags, and she was like waving at us in a posh way, and she's got like really posh clothes.
Wish her all the best in her Diamond Jubilee. I hope she lives another 60 years.
For everyone who was part of it, it was a day of celebration, a day to remember. Well, there's been a great sense of festivity here today. People have really enjoyed the day, and they didn't just come from across Wiltshire to be part of it. I spoke to people from Ohio and Toronto. In the 3 hours the Queen was here, she spoke to dozens of people, and she was seen by hundreds more. People commented on the attention she displayed to what she saw today, and the stamina she shows as the monarch continues her Diamond Jubilee tour. Back to you, Sally.
Bryony, thank you very much. What a day in Dorset and Wiltshire for those people. So pleased that the sunshine eventually came out.
Not even an extreme weather warning could deter these ardent royal watchers. Some had queued for hours just to bag the best spot.
Since 6:30!
6:30? Is it worth it in the rain?
Yeah, we love it. We love it!
Mind you, if you park too early in a spot earmarked for royalty, well, this is what happens. As if to order, the rain stopped as soon as the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh stepped off the royal train and into Sherborne. Only the royal feet saw any rain today. This was to be a brief Jubilee visit, only 1 hour, but the town was determined to put on a show, including a Mad Hatter's tea party in the grounds of the Abbey for local schoolchildren. So you're Alice in Wonderland?
Should be having our sausage, eggs and bacon for tomorrow breakfast.
From there it was on to Digby Church Memorial Hall for a 1952 themed coffee morning. And as she left, a chance encounter with some familiar looking canine fans.
She said that she's got her own 3 in the palace and that she was very pleased to see them out in attendance.
For young and old, this was a day which will live long in the memory. And those who've spent decades following royal visits say this Jubilee.
Good evening from Sherborne in Dorset, where the Queen started her Diamond Jubilee tour of the West Country today. Our reigning monarch arrived this morning amid the showers and with her kingdom very much on flood alert. Now, we'll have full reports on the local weather conditions later in the programme. But the good news, as the Queen and Prince Philip got off the royal train this morning, well, the skies cleared and the umbrellas came down. Our first report is from Clinton Rogers.
Yeah.
What did the Queen say to you, Alice?
She said hello, thank you, and is that for me when she saw the presents in my hand?
And what was the present you gave her?
A CD, flowers, and that's it.
A food fair showcased the best of Dorset, and the royal visitors even got a few samples to take back to Buckingham Palace.
I don't think she realised she could take the hamper away, but it's gone in the royal car, it's going on the train, and hopefully it'll go back to the palace and